Getting fired in front of 20 co-workers while holding a paper cup of lukewarm orange juice tends to clarify a few things. You do not panic, and you do not cry. You just stand there while the founder's mother slams her wrinkled fist onto a cheap folding table and shouts for your immediate exit, mistaking your 19 years of steady dedication for bloated overhead. She stared past me as if I was invisible, completely oblivious to the fact that I held the entire foundation of that company together. While she paraded around calling herself the new chief executive officer, she had no clue that every lease, every vendor contract, and every single bolt in that building had passed through my hands. I simply placed my security badge on the table and asked one silent question about who held the property rights. The room went dead silent as forks froze in midair and people stopped chewing their catered breakfast. The matriarch blinked in total confusion, completely unaware that the obscure holding company receiving quarterly rent checks belonged entirely to me. I grabbed my belongings, left the building with absolute composure, and immediately instructed key department members to closely inspect the outgoing financial routing numbers before I walked out the door for good. My next stop was not my home, but the quiet office of my personal attorney. I pulled out a thick manila folder containing the binding real estate agreements that corporate leadership had signed without ever reading. For nearly 2 decades, I had observed endless executive incompetence, so when an opportunity arose to legally secure the property rights under my personal blind trust, I built a kingdom right under their unobservant noses. Back at the headquarters, total operational chaos erupted within hours of my abrupt departure. The matriarch demanded full administrative control over my systems, only to discover that every critical facility's dashboard and project tracker was locked behind high-level security protocols linked directly to my personal devices. IT staff shrugged in defeat as they realized they could not override my security settings, leaving management completely locked out of the core infrastructure. When legal counsel desperately searched for current property records, they stumbled across the quarterly payout statements and realized something was terribly wrong. Hundreds of thousands of dollars had been routed away from the traditional property management group directly into Stone Lake Holdings, an independent entity signature authorized by T. Caldwell. The entire board sat in stunned silence as they slowly realized T. Caldwell matched my full legal name. Their panicked attempts to contact the building manager backfired immediately when he flatly refused to speak with anyone other than me. The corporate leadership group brought in senior legal partners to threaten me with fraudulent practices, but my attorney easily dismantled their hollow legal posturing. Everything had been executed properly, fully transparent, and countersigned by their own executive officers who were far too lazy to read the actual documents put before them. Realizing they had zero legal leverage, management scrambled to relocate their entire staff into a temporary commercial office space downtown. They packed up monitors, moved desks, and signed a quick emergency deal, only to discover that my secondary holding company held exclusive priority rights to that property as well. The matriarch publicly lost her temper in the hallway when the property manager refused them entry, realizing they were completely trapped. With nowhere left to turn, the panicked board of directors called an emergency meeting and invited the original founder back from his European vacation. When he arrived expecting to handle a routine operational update, he was shown the video footage of his mother firing the very person who controlled their real estate portfolio. The room erupted in heated arguments as board members openly criticized her reckless leadership and total lack of oversight. The executive team quickly realized that they were facing absolute financial ruin if they could not regain access to their primary operational headquarters. My attorney received a formal, highly reverent written proposal from their legal representatives, begging for immediate re-entry and offering to triple the lease rate moving forward. I instructed my legal counsel that I would accept their offer only if the tripled rental rate was applied retroactively for several months. Desperate to avoid complete business collapse, the board agreed to the steep financial penalties and begged for an in-person closing meeting. I walked back into that familiar corporate conference room, not as an underappreciated employee, but as the master landlord holding all the power. I placed the revised agreement onto the table, looked the founder directly in the eye, and delivered my final non-negotiable requirement for the deal. I made it explicitly clear that I would gladly lease the corporate space back to the company, but the founder's mother was permanently banned from stepping foot on the property again. The board members immediately agreed, leaving the matriarch standing in utter disbelief as her own family forced her out of the business. She walked out of the building completely humiliated, stripped of the influence she had so arrogantly abused. They wired the full retroactive payment within hours, covering my legal fees and securing my financial independence for the rest of my life. Sitting in my new high-rise office enjoying an expensive lunch, I reflected on how sweet it felt to watch arrogant people destroy themselves through their own greed and neglect. True power never comes from throwing temper tantrums, but from quietly controlling the foundation beneath everyone else's feet.